Welcome back to Abyss of Horror. Tonight I want to ask you something before we begin, and I want you to think about it genuinely, not just let it wash over you. When you are driving alone at night, windows up, music low, the road dark and mostly empty, do you ever check your back seat? Not when you get in. Most of us do it then, that quick automatic glance before we pull the door shut. The one we would be embarrassed to admit is about more than just checking for forgotten bags. I mean while you are driving. 30 minutes in. An hour in. When you have settled into the rhythm of the road and your guard is down and the back seat is just a dark shape in your peripheral vision that you have long since stopped registering, do you check? Because here is the thing about the back seat of a car. It is the one place in your immediate world that you cannot see without effort. It is right behind you. It is close enough that someone sitting there could reach you in under a second. And unless you turn around, unless you make a deliberate, conscious choice to look, you have absolutely no idea what is back there. Most nights, nothing. But this is Abyss of Horror. And tonight's story is about one of the other nights. This is The Watcher. Her name was Kara, 31 years old, a nurse at a regional hospital 2 towns over from where she lived. A woman who worked long shifts and drove home on roads that the rest of the world had largely gone to sleep on by the time she was done. She was used to the late drive. She had been doing it for 4 years and had long since made her peace with the particular aloneness of it. The dark fields on either side, the occasional truck going the other way. The radio turned low because after 12 hours on a ward, the last thing she needed was noise. She found the drive decompression, a buffer between the intensity of the job and the simplicity of home. 35 minutes of no one needing anything from her. She was practical the way people who work in medicine become practical, not unfeeling, the opposite of unfeeling, but with a clear-eyed relationship with fear that most people never develop. She knew what actual danger looked like. She had seen it, managed it, responded to it. She did not waste fear on things that did not deserve it. She was not the kind of woman who checked under the bed. She was not the kind of woman who watched horror content before sleeping, or who needed the television on, or who called someone when she got home from a late shift just to hear a voice. She was, in other words, exactly the kind of person this story was always going to happen to. Because the universe has a particular appetite for the capable and the unafraid. It finds them interesting. It was a Tuesday in late October. Not that the date matters, except that October in that part of the country means dark by 5 and properly, completely dark by 6. The kind of rural dark that city people don't understand. Not the orange-lit dimness of a city at night, but actual darkness, the sky and the fields and the road all one continuous black thing, broken only by whatever your headlights can reach. Kara came off shift at 11:40 p.m., 40 minutes late because a handover had run long, said goodbye to the 2 colleagues still finishing up, walked to her car in the staff car park. Well-lit, CCTV, the sensible precautions, and drove out onto the main road toward home. 20 minutes in, past the point where the main road narrowed and the streetlight stopped, a car came up behind her. Not unusual. The road, while quiet, wasn't empty. There were houses along it, farms set back from the verge, people who kept irregular hours the same way she did. A car behind her at midnight on a rural road was not a thing. She registered it the way you register a lamppost. Present, noted, immediately irrelevant. Then it flashed her. Headlights full beam, once, a white blaze in her mirrors that made her wince. She assumed she had done something wrong. Was she drifting? Too far into the middle of the road? She checked her speed, her position, everything normal. She drove on. The car behind maintained its distance, maybe 4 car lengths, holding steady. Then it flashed her again. Twice this time. She felt the first faint edge of irritation. Road rage for no discernible reason was a male specialty in her experience, and she was tired and not in the mood. She kept her speed, kept her line, refused to react. This sometimes worked. This did not work tonight. The car behind her flashed again and again, persistent, rhythmic, almost frantic. And that was when the irritation shifted. Because there is a difference, she would tell people afterward, between the aggression of a driver who wants you to move and the desperation of a driver who wants you to know something. The rhythm changed, the urgency in it. It stopped feeling like an attack and started feeling like a warning. She did not stop. She was a lone woman on a dark road at midnight, and stopping for an unknown car that was behaving erratically was not something her practical, clear-eyed brain was willing to do regardless of the intention behind the flashing. Instead, she sped up, enough to open the distance. The car behind sped up too, keeping pace, still flashing, and she felt her heart rate do what hearts do when the body has decided, below the level of conscious thought, that something is wrong. She drove the last 10 minutes home faster than she should have. She pulled into her driveway. She cut the engine, the car that had been following her, and she was using that word in her head now, following with all its weight. Pulled up at the curb outside her house and stopped. She called 999 before she opened her car door, told them her address, told them there was a vehicle outside she did not recognize, that she had been followed from the main road. They said they would send someone. She sat in her car with the doors locked and the phone in her hand and watched in her mirrors as the driver's door of the car at the curb opened and a man got out. He was middle-aged, ordinary-looking, wearing a high-visibility jacket over dark clothes, and he walked up her driveway not with the purposeful aggression of someone who had been following her out of malice, but with his hands slightly raised, open palms, the body language of someone who knows they look frightening and is trying very hard not to. He stopped a few meters from her car. He said, loudly enough for her to hear through the glass, "I am not going to hurt you. Please call the police if you haven't already. I just need to tell you something." She cracked the window 2 inches. She kept the phone up where he could see it. He said, "I'm sorry for frightening you on the road. I know how that must have looked. I need you to listen to me very carefully." She said, "Talk." He said, "I've been driving behind you for about 15 minutes. I was behind you when you left the hospital car park, and the whole way here, every time my headlights shone into your back window." He stopped, steadied himself. The way someone steadies themselves before saying something they know sounds insane. "Every time my headlights lit up your back seat, there was someone sitting in it." Kara's hand tightened on the phone. She said, "What?" He said, "Someone sitting upright, in the middle of the back seat. I could see them every time I flashed you. The moment you sped up, they would, I don't know, drop down, lean forward, get out of the light. But every time I flashed again, they were back, sitting there, looking forward, just sitting." The police arrived 9 minutes later. 2 officers. They took the man's details. His name was Paul. He was a warehouse supervisor driving home from a late shift. He had no record. He was visibly shaken in the way that people are shaken when they have seen something they cannot explain and have had to chase a stranger home to report it. He was not a threat. He was, as far as anyone could determine, a decent person who had done the right thing under circumstances that most people would have simply driven away from. They searched the car, back seat, boot, underneath. Nothing. No one. Kara stood on her driveway in the cold October night and watched them do it and felt the complicated emotional arithmetic of someone who is relieved and terrified in equal and irreconcilable measure. Because empty was good. Empty meant it was over. But empty also meant that whatever Paul had seen, and he had seen something, she believed him completely. She could not have told you why, but she believed him without hesitation. Had been in her car and was no longer in her car, which meant it had gotten out. Somewhere between her car and her front door, In the stretch of ordinary dark driveway she had walked 1,000 times, something had gotten out of her back seat and gone somewhere. The officers were kind and thorough and ultimately unable to offer her anything more concrete than, "Make sure your doors are locked tonight." Standard advice, reasonable advice, completely inadequate to the specific texture of what she was feeling, which was not the fear of a break-in, not the fear of a person, but something older and less nameable than either of those things. Paul gave her his number before he left, said to call if she needed anything, said he was sorry. She thanked him. She watched his car drive away and thought that she owed that man something she didn't have a word for. She went inside. She locked every door and every window. She checked every room, every cupboard, the bath, behind the sofa, under the bed. All the places the practical version of herself had always considered beneath consideration, all the places she was now checking with her heart in her throat and her hands not entirely steady. Nothing. Everywhere she looked. Nothing. She sat on her bed, fully dressed, and called her sister, who lived 40 minutes away, and talked to her for an hour about nothing important, just talked, just kept the line open and the voice in her ear while the house settled around her, and the October wind moved through the trees outside, and everything remained obstinately, resolutely, completely normal. She fell asleep around 3 a.m. with the lights on and her phone on the pillow. She found it in the morning. Not a person, not a body. She would almost have preferred that. Something concrete, something that the part of her trained in facts and evidence and diagnosis could process and categorize and treat. What she found was in the back seat of her car. She had gone out in the daylight to look, to do what the dark had made impossible the previous night, and see the space clearly and plainly, and confirm once and for all that it was just a back seat, just upholstery and headrests, and the sensible geometry of a family hatchback. On the middle seat, the one Paul had described the figure sitting in, upright, looking forward, there was an impression, pressed into the fabric, the unmistakable, perfectly formed impression of where a person had been sitting for a very long time, deep enough that the fabric had not sprung back. Not the impression you leave in 30 minutes or an hour. The kind of impression furniture gets when something has occupied it, regularly, with weight and consistency, for weeks. She stood in her driveway in the morning light and looked at it and understood something that the night had not allowed her to understand. It had not gotten into her car that night. It had been there for a long time, waiting every night in the seat behind her for a night dark enough and a road empty enough and a driver distracted enough, for a night when nobody was driving behind her with their headlights on. Kara moved out of the house 2 weeks later. She sold the car the same day she found the impression, privately, cash, to a man from 3 towns over who asked no questions. She told no one except her sister and Paul, who she called once to tell him what she had found. He was quiet for a long moment and then said, "I'm glad I followed you." She never found out what it was. She never found out how long it had been there. She never found a camera, a recording, any evidence of the nights before that Tuesday when Paul's headlights had illuminated the truth of what was sitting behind her. She just knew, and this is the part she said she would never be free of, not really, that it had been patient, that whatever had been sitting in the middle seat of her car in the dark, night after night, had been content to simply be there, to be close, to wait. For what? She never found out. She told her sister once, late at night over a glass of wine, "The worst part isn't that it was there. The worst part is that I'll never know what it was waiting for me to do. So I'll leave you tonight with that thought sitting quietly in the back of your mind, right where it belongs. You check your back seat when you get in. Of course you do. We all do. But here is the question I want you to take home with you tonight. The one I want you to think about on the drive back, on the dark road, with the music low. What if it already knows to wait until you stop checking? Lock your doors tonight, keep your mirrors clean, and if someone on a dark road starts flashing their lights behind you, for the love of everything, pull over. Sweet nightmares from Abyss of Horror. If you're new here, welcome, and I am so sorry. Like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Check your back seat.